Right, so it's a fair enough point to raise in my view, especially from those of us who came from Corbyn's Labour formerly, that with the smear machine ramping up again now against the Green Party, chiefly from the same Labour right-wingers who brought the Corbyn project down, that they don't fall into the same trap of attempting to placate those making these baseless accusations, or ignore what is being said completely in the hope that it will just blow over, because having pulled off this scam successfully before, attacks on the left, accusing them of being anti-Semitic and all the rest, because all of a sudden it's becoming a lot more prevalent. And the reason for that is pretty obvious. Labour, as right-wing as they are making it abundantly clear that they now are, especially with the admission of hard-right Tory Natalie Elphicke into their party, are running scared of the Greens, and they should be. Because for all the talk of the left and socialists having nowhere to go, whether Labour offer anything to them or not, it simply isn't true in this day and age, and if Starmer wasn't getting his advice from a Blairite 90s relic like Peter Mandelson, who still believes the left have nowhere to go, he might not be making the painfully avoidable mistakes that he is. Right, so the Green Party are now the target of Labour Party weaponisers of all things dishonest. We know who they are, we know what they did to destroy the hopes of a changed country, shaped by a socialist vision. There was the sabotage, the smears, the accusations of being a racist and presiding over a racist party, all aided and abetted by an establishment media, owned lock, stock and barrel by billionaire media barons. When Labour had a socialist leader in Jeremy Corbyn, they set out to destroy him, even as he admirably tried to unite the party, bringing all parts of the broad church that Labour supposedly is, all together to realise real transformative change for the benefit of the many and not the few. We know that failed, and we know it failed because you cannot placate people who don't want to be placated, who would be a better fit in the Tory party anyway, when their beliefs in capitalism and privatisation and Thatcherite continuity chime much more closely with that party. And I suppose it's a combination of not wanting the Tory label and being wedded to what Tony Blair did to Labour, turning the party into a Tory-light party, that would take turns in power with the Tories to preserve the status quo and always ensure the establishment was protected no matter who was in power. That isn't a democracy when that is the only outcome we, as ordinary working class people across this country, can vote for. And that is underlined even further by an electoral system trapping us in that cycle. We need electoral reform. Both main parties are dead set against it for the aforementioned obvious reasons. Until that wheel gets broken, this country just becomes more oppressive, more authoritarian, and ever less being run in the interests of its people. Where Tony Blair benefited from there being no social media to call him out for what he was doing, where Blair was capable of not giving the game away so obviously, a competent politician, if still a completely rancid one, Keir Starmer isn't. He is to politics what a toddler trying to ram a square block into a round hole in a shape sorter is. He makes his Tory intentions, his pro-establishment leanings so blatantly obvious, and nothing has exposed that more in recent times than his support for Israel, his continuity Tory policies, which are disgusting more and more people, now at the point where workers' rights are literally being watered down by the party that is supposed to be for the workers. And he's only gone and underlined that with the equivalent of a big black permanent marker by admitting a trade union bashing, refugee attacking, social justice opposing hard right harridan like Natalie Elphicke into the Labour Party. The third Tory he's opened his arms to since he became leader. While decent, actual Labour MPs, socialist MPs, are ostracised, suspended and purged. But what do they care though? Where else will the left go, they say? This is the mantra of Starmer's guru Peter Mandelson, of course. You don't need to offer the left anything. And certainly Starmer's conduct is in line with that. Desperately wooing Tories, the admission of Elphicke for little more than a soundbite at PMQs was risible. But equally he's sending a message saying if we will allow someone as batshit right-wing as this into Labour, all of you who align with her are welcome too. Don't worry about the rotten lefties. They've got nowhere else to go. They'll sit there, be quiet and give us our vote when we demand it. Well, it's just not true. And slowly but surely, certainly following another set of underwhelming local elections for Labour, no matter what mainstream media sources might say, Labour can see where it is bleeding support off to, that it is expected would stay with it no matter how Tory they went, but instead more and more people chose to vote Green or vote Independent or vote for another smaller party. Now, I quite readily confess to being a Green Party member and a councillor. Regular viewers already know this, because I'm proud of it. It's a party where being a socialist doesn't come with a punishment. And to underline just how worried Labour are, all of a sudden Mandelson seems to have changed his tune on the Greens.
This is a very important development. I mean, a lot of these people are now leaving, quitting the Labour Party. They see that Starmer and his changed Labour Party and what he's about is here to stay. They can no longer attempt to overturn it. And I think it's significant also for the Green Party. The Green Party is becoming a dustbin, a bit of a repository, not only for climate activists, but for disgruntled hard leftists leaving the Labour Party and some fairly unpleasant hardline Free Palestine activists as well. They're all turning to the Greens. And I think whilst in the first instance the Greens look sort of bigger and emboldened, I think this is going to change the complexion of the Green Party, and I think they will rue the day when they threw open their doors to all these people.
And all these people saying, oh, Keir Starmer should do this and that, and from the left and the sort of Corbynista wing, you're basically saying good riddance.
I'm not saying good riddance. I mean, I don't mind them staying. They're in a small minority. If they want to remain as a tassel to Starmer's Labour Party, they can. I mean, we're a broad church.
Tassels as a
but they are but the Momentum organisation is disintegrating. Most of the hard left are going. Many of them are joining the Greens. And as I say, I think that will change the nature of the Greens, and sort of good luck to them and all strength to Starmer's elbow.
I suppose the first thing I'd want to say to that is thank you to Peter Mandelson for such an outstanding advert for joining the Green Party. It is now a place for left-wingers, climate change activists and pro-Palestine supporters, or a dustbin for them, as he calls it, who are clearly not people wanted in Starmer's Labour then. Though, of course, if you want to stay, that's fine with him. You can be a tassel on Starmer's Labour, a mascot, a pet. Look at you. If we were all such disposable material, though, why are you running scared of us then? Mandelson is yesterday's man. He's never been with the times and has certainly never been on the side of ordinary working class people. He prefers the company of, I don't know, for example, Russian oligarchs and billionaire sex traffickers. He does love to spend time on the private yachts of the super rich, after all. He's not been the only one on the attack, though, and as much as Mandy's smugness is par for the course for him and his right wing of the Labour Party, there are others who are going for tried and tested methods of attack, such as the Jewish Labour movement, where you need neither be in Labour or even Jewish to be a member of them, so it is little better than, frankly, just another pro-Starmer, pro-Israel lobbying group. And it has turned the accusations of anti-Semitism on the Green Party now. And they've sent a 2-page statement, no less, to the co-leaders of the Green Party, Carla Denyer and Adrian Ramsey, demanding they act on the anti-Semitism in their party. Now, I'm not going to go into the letter itself. It's bollocks. The tweet that accompanied it was enough, though, and that reads, "The Green Party have repeatedly failed to take action to stamp out anti-Semitism in their party and to remove anti-Semites from their ranks. We first warned the Green Party about this last year. Sadly, we've had to write again. There's nothing progressive about protecting racists." Now, if a Labour-linked body wants to pick on itself, its own party, over allegations of racism and anti-Semitism, then that is completely up to them. We saw them do it with Corbyn, but as far as going after another party, especially when you are again giving the Tories and other parties a free pass, this is just an illusion or just an illustration of anti-Semitism being used as a political football by Labour figures. That is racist. That is disgusting. And the JLM should apologise for their conduct there. They have nothing to do with the Greens. Their process is their due diligence, and they can certainly shut their holes when their party operates a hierarchy of racism where only anti-Semitism ever seems to matter. And indeed, the letter itself is an attack on 2 Muslim Green Party candidates elected last Thursday, all based on the reporting it would appear of the Jewish Chronicle, a publication that has been rinsed more than any other by its regulator Ipso, and Ipso are basically toothless, so that really is saying something. Using accusations of racism as a political tool is itself racist. In fact, it should be considered amongst the worst kinds of racism. The JLM should just stay in their lane. But the Jewish Chronicle isn't the only media outlet also implicated in this apparent campaign against the Green Party, and indeed Muslim Green Party candidates, who appear to be being disproportionately targeted. You see, another electee last Thursday was up in Leeds, a chap called Mothin Ali, who in celebration of his win cried Allahu Akbar, God is great in Arabic, as that means, but which has, thanks to much media framing, not just news, but entertainment media as well, frankly, largely and unfairly, that phrase has become synonymous with terror attacks. It is a cheer, nothing more or less. Muffin Ali is an accountant who in his spare time runs a gardening blog called My Family Garden. Nevertheless, the claim was soon made in the Tory graph, naturally, that Ali was under investigation for what he'd said, and it didn't stop a Tory councillor taking to Twitter to post the article complaining that Ali was only being investigated when he should be deported instead. Well, as I understand it, he was born in Sheffield, you prat. That's not really very far to deport him, is it? At any rate, his only crime, it appears, was having stood on a pro-Gaza platform. But he also isn't under investigation as Green Party Deputy Leader Zach Polanski took to task this Tory councillor, Ian Goll, when he posted, "This is totally inaccurate and willful misleading reporting. No one is being investigated for shouting 'God is great.' The only people who take offence to that are the same sort of Tory and Labour councillors that engage with the same sort of Islamophobia as Ian Goll here." And I think Polanski did exactly what was needed there, pushed back. Though Ali still published a written apology for any offence caused. I would like to think he did that of his own volition and not been made to having do so. Certainly many people are jumping to that conclusion. I personally don't see that he had anything to apologise for whatsoever. But there are lessons to be learned by what happened to Corbyn here, that the Greens need to take on board now. Clearly they are the establishment's next chosen target. They are the ones that they are now running scared of. Therefore, for anyone wanting to be where the change is clearly coming from in their view, and I agree for a change, though I'm already a member, so I'm biased anyway, now seems a good time to get on board with the Greens and join, and indeed, in light of last week's local election successes and the attacks on the Greens that have come since, not that there could possibly be a connection, you understand, many people have already. The Greens are the party not just for climate change, something else Mandelson evidently thinks belongs in the dustbin. So there's Labour again for you, but also for social justice, racial justice and economic justice. Much of what Corbyn put forward in his manifestos was also in Green Party manifestos and remains there, more importantly. The attacks will keep coming though, but they need to be seen for what they are, and equally it can be turned back on other parties. So let's flip this back on Labour themselves. Why are you letting in so many Tories if you're supposed to be the alternative to them? Why are Tories from the hard right allowed in but not people from the left? We know you'll never let Jeremy Corbyn stand again as a Labour MP, but why is Diane Abbott still suspended after a year when Tories can walk in the front door to become Labour MPs? No matter what they've said or done or ever voted for. Is Peter Mandelson an advisor in an official capacity for Keir Starmer? And if so, why would someone with ties to the super rich, to people like Peter Epstein, be suitable to be in such a lofty, elevated position within his Labour Party? What due diligence did you do on him? And should we assume that that was about the same as was done on Natalie Elphicke? Why are the Jewish Labour movement the only representative body acting on behalf of the Labour Party in order to deal with anti-Semitism when their Labour and Jewish links are arbitrary? There are other more solidly Jewish groups there, like Jewish Voice for Labour. Why not use them? The Ford report identified a hierarchy of racism. Why have Labour not enacted any of its recommendations? Why did Starmer ban MPs from talking to Martin Ford afterwards as well? Why are the JLM still overseeing anti-Semitism training when Ford found their training to be inadequate? Is that why you won't let your MPs talk to Ford? Because you don't like the fact that he called the JLM out? I could go on, and I could go on, and I could go on. There is no shortage of attack lines against Starmer's Labour, completely legitimate and proven that the Greens could and should be responding with if, frankly, this carries on. If they don't, then they're going to be Corbynated too. There's a reason the Greens are doing well and attracting new members, and that is because the appetite for change is still there, still in demand, and it's no longer on offer in Labour. If Mandelson thinks we won't go elsewhere, he clearly hasn't learnt that we can and we will are. I went over some more ideas for Green and Indie candidates in light of their victories last week in this video recommendation here, so if you enjoyed this video, you might like to watch that next and stay with this channel, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.